24 seconds. Hi, this is Sheldon Abbott from KUCI. I'm here with Junior Watson, doing a little interview today, finding out a little bit more about Mr. Watson from the Wayback Machine. Good morning.
Good morning there, Sheldon.
How are you, Mr. Watts?
Everything's good.
Word has it you were born in Visalia.
That's correct. Grew up in Tulare.
Isn't that the home of the largest farm show in the nation?
They got a big one there at the fairgrounds. Yeah.
That was just a note. And you went to school in the area too, undoubtedly.
Yes, I went to St. Aloysius Catholic School there, Tulare.
And at what point did you run into, if I may ask, jump to Bill Stuve? When did you meet Bill?
Oh, that's a few years after the fact there. I moved from Tulare in 1965 to San Jose. And that's where I ran into Bill right off the bat.
At school or in the neighborhood?
Just in the neighborhood. I was walking around and I heard this band playing. There was like a teen center in this park, maybe about 2.5 blocks from where my mom lived, at the Garden of Eden Apartments. And I heard them playing, and I went in there and I said, "Hey, that doesn't sound quite right."
Naturally.
I go, "This is the way it really goes." And he, Bill was had his eyes wide open, ready to learn and stuff. And I was just the guy to try to teach him, but I would just go over there and try to correct him every now and again on their mistakes.
And you guys became friends after that?
Oh, yeah.
And hung around, and
oh, yeah.
Word has it, I've been paying attention, that you guys would teach each other songs. Songs that you've learned.
He never taught me any songs.
He never taught you songs. How about the Beatles songs? Who was first to
well, he was doing Michelle by the Beatles all wrong. So I had to correct him on all this stuff, and he goes, "Do that again." And I go, "I'll do it as many times as you want me to do it, but I want to see you do it once." And he finally ended up doing it. But he ended up switching from guitar to bass, which I think was probably the best thing for him, because he's turned out to be a world-class bass player.
I believe you're right. I concur with that.
So.
And let's see, what was the first instrument that you picked up? Any instrument?
No, the guitar is the first one I attempted.
And do you remember what it was? Acoustic or?
No, it was electric.
First guitar.
Actually, yeah, it was my butt. See, there was these Mexican friends of mine, the Trujillo brothers. They lived behind my grandma's house. That was in Tulare, on the other side of the alley in the back. And I'd hear them. They had some cousins that were in. See, what was the name of that band? It'll come to me. They were a regional Mexican superstar band, that had just a couple regional hits. I don't think the rest of the United States or California probably ever heard of them, but they were big stuff there, and they were their cousins. So they would rehearse over there, and then also Paul and his brother were trying to attempt to play guitar too. So they got me into it, and of course the first guitar that I ever got came from White Front. Did you ever have White Front stores here?
Sure, right up here on Harbor Boulevard.
So, it was like the tip equivalent of Walmart or Target or something like that back then. And the guitar was called a Rodeo, which is basically a Taisco Zemgar, Japanese guitar, right? So the one that was on the showroom floor there, I picked up and had in my hand, which I knew nothing about the guitar in the first place. But the one that they gave me was not that guitar. They gave me a cardboard box, with a guitar in it. By the time I got it home, there was only 2 strings on that guitar. There was a facade of a living room in the front of that place, my grandmother, and they added on to the back of the house, and then there was a side entrance, so nobody ever went to the front of the house. It was just there for holidays, always looking perfect. And that's where I used to go to rehearse, to get away from the house.
Perfect.
Because you couldn't. It was pin drop quiet in here. I could hear myself. They couldn't hear me when I was messing up. So there was a song back then. Walk right in, sit right down. Man. I did that on those 2 strings.
Let your hair hang down.
And they thought I was a genius. And then they bought the rest of the strings, and it's been downhill ever since.
It's been a lot easier since been downhill. Been a lot easier since you got 6 strings.
Now I know why bass players play, man, because they only got 4. Much less confusing than 6.
That's pretty funny. remember the first song or songs that you first learned, when you picked up that two-stringer besides Walk Right In? Was there any other songs that you could actually play when you got 6 strings that you can remember?
Early on, I mean, we all got into surf music, so, those songs just seemed to come pretty flowingly, because everybody learned them at once. All my buddies, everybody was attempting the same songs. It's kind of like blues nowadays, in a weird way, That was the focal point. Everybody worked on the same song.
So like the Miserloo or the Dick Dale or the Safaris.
Let's start with Adventures. Walk, Don't Run.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of surf songs that intertwine that cross over too. So surf music was a big part of that, huh?
What's the other? Yeah, the Shadows. I mean, I'd go to the theater. It used to cost like 25 cents for a matinee on Sunday, I believe it was. And my grandmother dropped me off, and I'd watch these shows, Cliff Richards with the Shadows,
Oh, that's right.
And all these movies, and that just got me more involved in guitar, wanting to do it.
How do you see the Junior Watson style in the big picture of blues back then or today? And how do you see yourself in the blues world?
Well, I like to just say like this. The first band that I was ever in was a Gary Smith blues band. He was a harmonica player, still playing great, still doing it
Today.
That was 1970. So, just like most of the harmonica bands that are here, they all go for the Little Walter stuff right off the bat. So, show me a guitar solo on a Little Walter record. There are none. So I think I'm one of the first guys to just really try to figure out what that was all about, because you can't take a regular guitar solo in that situation, because the beats, that band was a swing band, which many people don't see it that way, but it was a swing band. It was a small band trying to sound like an orchestra. Well, all that stuff is in the Little Walter song, like a Count Basie song. If you really check it out, and the beats are double shuffle with the backbeat. All the other Otis Rush and all that stuff, no double shuffles, backbeat shuffles. See what I'm saying? That's easy to solo too. So I thought to myself, how am I going to do this? So I says, well, there are none on those records. I'm going to have to seek out the 40s stuff what those guys listen to. And that's where I found out Tiny Grimes, Bill Jennings, Renee Hall, and the list goes on and on and on and on. And then you have to cipher out, like Charlie Christian, the father of it all, but complicated progressions. It's playing fantastic, but you can't just learn that stuff and then play it in blues, because it's different chord structures, right? So I had to narrow it down. Like Teddy Bunn has a lot of songs that are just blues-based. Bill Jennings, Tiny Grimes, you could sneak a lot of that stuff in there. And that's what taught me how to really solo blues. And now it's just, the whole West Coast scene, like it was back in the 40s, is kind of, everything goes around in cycles with this music, in a circle, from the beginning, from even before I was ever playing. If you follow it from the 40s, 50s, it goes in a cycle. Few years, folk music. Like, I remember seeing, Sleepy John Estes, John Lee Hooker, Bucka White, Lightnin' Hopkins, tons of them, at these folk things in 1966 when I was in high school. You pay $1 to get in and see all these guys trying to cut each other, just playing acoustic, right? And John Lee Hooker was one of the baddest guys I've ever saw in that situation. He just had it. And that was then. Then about three years later, you got the Fillmore opening up there, right?
Right.
Or 2 years later, I should say, 67, 68. And you had all these rock bands on there, and you had a captive audience. And then all of a sudden, there's Buddy Guy, there's Albert King. You're going, what is this? So it's pretty amazing times to be exposed to all that back then.
Do you recall where you saw these? Of course, Fillmore. Were there any other venues that you went
Tons,
to?
Man. Avalon Ballroom, Wonderland, Playland at the Beach, Matrix.
These are all in the city.
All in the city, or Berkeley too, but mainly in San Francisco. Amazing times, really amazing times.
Did you have any people that you liked seeing back then that you wanted to see?
Tons, and I saw them. Pretty much saw everybody I wanted to see. The only guy that I didn't get a chance to see was Earl Hooker. Pretty much, and Howlin' Wolf. But other than that, everybody.
Muddy,
Albert
King,
many times.
How about Freddie? Freddie King,
many times too.
Yeah,
he was great.
Was there anyone that stood out more than another?
They were all overwhelming to me to see every one of those guys. You know,
I mean, in a good way, yeah,
In a good
overwhelming.
way. Oh, it's just like, you know,
Emotional.
yeah, you just like seeing a white light, you know, because you had the records, you know, and all of a sudden there they are. And I lived right across the street from the bodega that was in Campbell, California. I lived right next to the fire department. So I literally walked half a block to see Freddie King. So Walter Horton, this is a harmonica player, I had to switch gears on this, but was going to be playing at this bodega club. I think the year was like 1970, 71 maybe. And on the poster it said, one night only, Robert Lockwood Jr. and Walter Horton. I go, how can I not go? I got to see this, man. So I took off work. Supposed to work at this place called the Iron Apple. Canceled the show. So my buddy comes over there. I won't mention his name, and he was super excited. He was a harmonica player. I cannot believe it, man. Walter Horton, this is going to be great. So we start walking over to the club, and this guy, my friend, was big, man, 6'3". So Walter Horton was a big old guy too. So he had that, you know, what do they call it, the Russian hat that looked like a bear's hat.
Cossack hat.
Yeah, because it was winter time. It must have been November, late November. And all of a sudden, my buddy there, he goes, there he is. There's Walter Horton. And he comes up and he grabs Walter Horton. He's walking with him and he's trying to give him a compliment, but he says, Walter, you've got my tone. And he goes, ain't this a bitch? this white MF says I got his tone. And he and you know, this buddy of mine was apologizing. Go, no, I love you, Walter Horton. We walked in the place, and the whole entire time he's looking out at this guy going, and he played just amazing. He was so fired up because this guy pissed him off that he just played better than ever. And, you know, I just got a big kick out of it.
That is funny. You've got my
tone.
tone.
You know, the amazing thing about that night was they both played through little champs sitting on chairs, and the place was packed, and it just sounded amazing. Just proved to me that you don't have to play loud as hell.
No, that's true. You said that all along.
And another thing that comes to mind with that is one time I was watching Freddie King, and they had this gigantic chair. It was like a, what do you call it, mission style chair, you know, a big old wooden chair, extra made. He was a huge guy, by the way. I mean, one of the biggest guys that I saw back then, physically. He's sitting in this chair and he looked like a toy kid. That's how big this chair was, right? So two hippie girls were sitting on his lap when I walked into the club. And there he was with these two hippie girls, and I go, hey, there. He goes, do you see Freddie King sitting there? And I go, where? And I look over, and I go, amazing. I go, he looks like a little kid. That chair's so big with those hippie girls in it. That night, he's playing, right? He had twin reverb. Cranked so heavy through the PA went out. All of a sudden, it sounded just like that old record I've been listening to. They were doing it. They were messing the sound up, like, you know, too much power. As soon as the PA went out, I go, there it is, man. That's what he sounds just like he does on this record.
Beautiful. Got to the sound setting.
It's happened naturally for a reason.
Hit a stop right here if we could. I understand that you also were, you've been a sideman for a lot of different people. People seek you out to play with them. And can I name some names and ask you questions? Like, you played for a little while with Big Mama Thornton, I understand.
Yeah, that would be the Bay Area thing with Gary Smith. We backed up everybody back then at that time because we were one of the premier bands that were playing, you know, pretty much Chicago blues, you know, so. Big Mama Thornton, that was 1976 when that happened. the place called the Palms in San Francisco. So it was a 6-night engagement, and every night at least 1 or 2 people got fired.
Really?
Or a couple of nights, the Horny Horns, there were 3 of them. All at once they got fired. Then there was a piano player, not Skip Rose. He was in Muscle Lights band. He was there one night. I think he just didn't want to make it the next day. He didn't get fired, but he just left.
But he felt the boom, felt them lowering the boom.
But you know what? She'd look over at me and she'd give me a dirty look like this. Then I just look at her and I'd smile a little bit. She'd start smiling, and that was it. And I knew it. Well, I made it one more night, and it just kept going on night after night.
So you didn't get fired from the band?
Never did.
You said nearly everybody got fired.
Everybody except for me and Gary Smith. Matter of fact, there was a bass player that was there the last night of this thing, Lou Bottini, who came in the Gas Lamp about 4 months ago. I haven't seen him for a while. He used to work for the railroad down here. And I reminded him, and I go, remember that time? I go, just turn your back to the audience, because she was going crazy, you know, saying a bunch of crazy things to the audience and everything. And I go, Lou, turn this way. And he goes, I can't. And he made it.
I can't do it.
He made it through the night without getting fired. But he played the last night of that game.
What was it like playing with her? Was she exciting? Was it just 6 days in a row, 6 nights?
6 nights in a row. Well, you know, it was a learning. All of that was a learning experience. You know, but what can I say? You know, I don't think she was up to par from the first time I saw her at the Fillmore in '67. You know, at that point, you know, this is many years later, right? She was amazing then. You know, she was healthy. You know, very vibrant singer, loud. You know.
Yeah.
By this point, a lot of alcohol had been involved in it and stuff like that. Still, in there you heard glimpses of the genius that she still had going.
I understand. I don't know if you're aware of it, but I understand she did. She toured with Johnny Ace. That Johnny Otis had put together a tour package with Johnny Ace.
Yeah. Supposedly she was there when he supposedly was playing Russian roulette.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The Johnny Ace story.
That's what it is, right? She was backstage with him. She was the only one that was backstage with him right before that happened.
The Johnny Ace story was a very, very famous singer. If you're not aware, and they had been put together on one of the first package type tours around the nation, and they were in Houston backstage, and Johnny Ace was playing with a.
He did it quite frequently.
Is that right?
Yeah, that was.
Thank you.
Thing.
And
played Russian roulette with one shell in the gun.
And
flipping it all the time.
She got pissed. She told him she took it away from him, as I understand it, and then he talked her into giving it back, and he did it again, and that was his last time.
She wasn't there though, supposedly. She was there right before that happened, and she went out front, came back and got the news. Yeah.
The late great Johnny Ace.
He was a great singer.
Is there any other memorable people that you've played with that you can look back and smile on and remember that?
Many of them. Many people.
Well, you were in the original, if I may interject. I asked you a question, forgive me. Tell me about the beginning, the inception of the Mighty Flyers.
Well, I had done a record, the last thing with Gary Smith in 1970, once again, 76, it was an album at that time that they since have reissued called Blue Bay, where they just highlighted a bunch of the artists up in the Bay Area. For instance, Luther Tucker, who we played with hundreds of times.
Right.
Let's see, Ron Thompson, Sonny Rhodes, what's his name? High Tide Harris, Charlie Musselwhite, who I was in his band for a year too, also back then. I don't know. It goes on and on. I can't. There was a Robert Lowry, who's a Robert Johnson sounding guy. Really good guy. Anyway, so that was the last hurrah of Gary Smith making that album. And then I get a call from Steve Gomes, who went on to play with Ronnie Earl, and he's a bass player, you know.
Right.
And he says, hey, you know, he used to come down to LA back then to play with T-Bone, you know, and various guys, you know. So he goes, hey, Rod Piazza's looking for a guitar player, and I played him the cut which is basically a little Walter song that we put on. There's 2 of them on that Blue Bay, and Rod listened to it and goes, "That's all the guitar I need to hear," because there was no guitar solo, it was just playing rhythm, and that's basically what I got hired for. So Rod came up to us. He was up in the Bay Area doing some stuff in San Francisco at the Coffee Gallery, and I can't remember the name of the other club. So that was my first meeting with him, and he just goes, "Hey man, I'm thinking about doing this little tour of Eugene, Oregon with George Harmonica Smith, Pee Wee Crayton, Johnny Dyer." And so these guys all picked me up at my mother's house. And I got in that band, and it was just amazing. That was the start of it all.
On a personal note, did Evie did she ever get to go to your shows?
Well, she went to a lot of them. A lot of them throughout there, sure.
Great.
She really did. My mother was a singer too.
I understand that.
Yeah.
And so she supported and went out to some of the gigs.
Oh yeah.
So she knew Billy pretty well, and she must have met all these other cats too. Huh?
Bill come over the house.
What's the funniest George Smith story that you could relate?
These are touchy, man, because you just can't say them to the general public. I'll tell you one off the hook. Turn it off. Okay, so with George, we're cutting the what is it called? Boogieing with George. First it was an album. Once again, now it's reissued under a CD, which was a lot of fun. That was done at the Ted Brinson studio. That's where a lot of records came out of there, actually. But Hollywood Fats ended up going to that studio. So this is about, I don't know, 6-7 years after they were in there, at least 80, 83. So we're in there with George. So the studio was it had been run down. It just been, stopped. So a lot of the stuff was intermittent, the knobs, and there would be crackling and stuff like that. So the engineer, who was about 88 at that time, goes, "Hold it." You'd be playing a song and everything seemed like you're good, and all of a sudden the lights would come on, they'd flash, and they'd go, "Hold it. Just give me a minute." And you hear all this noise. So that's where we did a lot of talking to each other. Because nobody knew what George was going to do, including George. So you just had to kind of keep your ears open and your eyes open and figure out what was going on. You didn't hear a key. I had to find the key. I was pretty good at it because I just do it real quiet and real quick. I just keep sliding the guitar because you go, "Ooh," and I go, "A." I just go, "A," and I go, "Got it." And Honey was back there just panicking. So everybody was scared of George, because he was a mean-looking guy, if you didn't know him. So we start this one thing. He goes, he's like this, and I go, "C." So it starts, right? Starts going good, and all of a sudden George goes like this. And Honey's eyes open like saucers, and all of a sudden the guy goes, "Hold it." So Bill Stuve goes to George, "George, what's the name of the song?" And he goes, "Sunbird, Bill." He goes, "What's a sunbird?" And he goes, "When the satellite goes into orbit? That's a sunbird." And he goes, "Oh yeah." He goes, "What's that noise that you're doing?" He goes, "That's a Masonic boom."
Masonic.
And we cracked up, and the song started once again. And then it's on the record.
Masonic boom.
It's called Sunbird.
Sunbird.
I think it's on YouTube, as a matter of fact. You have to listen to it. You'll hear that noise.
Tell us about Linwood Slim. How did you first meet Richard Duran, and tell us about that relationship?
In 1988, I joined Canned Heat, February 15th. And by September, either late August or early September, they have a Duluth Festival in Minnesota. And there's a girl there, Julia Schroeder, who at that time she worked for a production company that put backline for that festival and what have you. And I'd known her for a couple of years. And I was there with Canned Heat playing this festival. So she comes up, she says, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" Got a buddy of mine that's playing down the street here, Linwood Slim. And I go, "Linwood Slim?" I go, "What is he doing?" She says, "He's a singer, harmonica player." And I go, "All right, let's go." So all of us, Larry, Fido, James T, myself, we walked over to the club, and he was with this guy. I'll never forget this guy. Whoever the guitar player, I don't know what his real name was, but Slim introduced him as Cool Breeze. There was Cool Breeze on the guitar. So he comes up to me. It was like I'd known Slim all my life, and I'd never heard of him. He comes up and goes, "Hey, Junior," and I go, "You know me?" He goes, "Oh man, I know who you are. I know. I've been talking to Kid." I go, Kid Ramos, huh?" He goes, "Yeah." He goes, "He came through with Harmon." You know, I guess because Slim was in Minneapolis. He was living there for a while. So he says, "Hey, I'm thinking about coming out to California. You know, I might, do some recording. Would you be interested?" I go, "Yeah, give me a heads up when you're coming and everything." He's okay, no problem. So he sends a postcard. In the meantime, I don't know nothing about Linwood Slim, so I'm thinking, before I get involved in this guy, I'm going to put the feelers out and see what anybody has to say about him. So Rick Holmstrom, who was in the Mighty Flyers, when I quit, is out on a tour. And back then we used to communicate with postcards. He put his dates on a card, and I go, "Oh," he'd send me the card before he left on the tour, and I go, "Hey man, say hi to blah blah blah," or "Where's the record shop at? Go to this shop here." We communicate like that. So I say, "Hey, I see you're going to Minneapolis. Put the feelers out on Linwood Slim, see what you come up with." So he sends me a postcard back, and I go, it says here, "So I talked to Richard D, and he said that Linwood Slim is a crook and a shyster." So I put the postcard right by the front door by the lamp. So here's Slim coming to California. And he walks in the door, and I go, "Slim, is this true?" And I hand him the card, and he looks like it, and he goes like this. "Well, yeah, but I never screwed a musician." And we just started working together, and I never had a problem.
What was
guy.
Well, pardon me. What was the first recording that you did with Linwood Slim?
That would be that's that first recording we did back then. That was called "Lost in America."
Lost in America. That's a good recording too.
That was a lot of fun. That was done very quickly and to the point.
Here or back there?
That was actually done at the studio right across from the crab cooker. What's the name of that studio that was back there?
Oh, Lion
Studio, yeah.
Kirk Lion, a good friend of mine.
Right. Yeah.
He's just moved around the corner. He's still there.
It's still there?
Yeah, he's over on 21st Street there. A lot of people have recorded at Lion Studios, from Kenny Loggins to Stevie Wonder to a lot of people.
Is that right?
Oh, yes.
Wow. Yeah, it was a nice studio.
And yeah, and it's even better now. Let's see, I have a question for you. In regards to the students, here's a blank page when you start all over. You have a lot of contacts in the world. You're even talking about going back to Europe. You are scheduled to play in Europe again this year. Who do you enjoy playing with when you go over? Any certain bands or certain artists, or do you just like what? Is it the money that's drawing you there to play with whoever they can get, or do you pick the bands? It's a lot of questions there.
That's a lot of questions. Where do you want me to start? Well, years ago, you didn't have too many options to play with people over there. When I first started going over there in 1980 with Rod, there were no bands to play with. There were no, we were the example.
Yes.
What started a lot of the whole thing for people to go, wait a minute, maybe this really can be done. They're playing it much, because it was loud, man. I mean, you go to England, it was like, 100-watt Marshalls and stuff in there at all times. Small little clubs. I go, really? And then we come in there and they go, this is all you got? What's wrong with you guys? I go, wow. And the whole world was like that. So I think we put a pretty vivid example of what to do.
What can be done correctly.
And now, you can go to a country where that wasn't affected by that whole thing, because there's kids now that are playing really great everywhere. Every country that I could think of. Spain, Italy, Brazil, you name it, man. There's people in every country to go to now to play. No, so these guys, I've never played with this band particularly, but I know what they do. Oh no, I take that back. I played with a couple of guys from the band, with Harmon, last November in Copenhagen. That's Lars, and I can't remember the drummer. Great drummer too, by the way, in that band. So I don't know who I'm even playing with this time, to tell you. He's going to hand-pick the players from different situations.
And then when you go to South America, sometimes you've gotten to know Igor Prado band pretty well, and
the head cutters down there.
The head cutters too. That's right.
From the south of Brazil.
Yeah, you pointed out to me that even though they're both from Brazil, they don't see each other very often.
Not a lot unless you get on a plane.
There's 1,000 miles apart.
I don't think the head cutters ever go to Sao Paulo. Vice versa, they'll go down to see their good-looking blonde girls and stuff.
Nice, down in the thick of it down there. Did you ever meet B.B. King?
Oh yeah, I saw B.B. King 1967, 69, 70, 71, all those years.
When he toured, he toured with the Stones in '69, was it?
I don't know, I didn't see that.
I did.
I didn't see the Stones, actually. They're one of the ones I missed. Out of all the rock and roll things I saw. There are probably some stories, but you know what? Well, some of these situations, you have to realize I was a kid, and I was overwhelmed. You know what I mean? I was just happy to be there, and it was like a euphoric situation. I've heard some of my friends talk, I go, really? That happened? And I'm thinking, I can't use that because I was there.
I was there, that's right.
And I don't remember that happening. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I don't know. So many of them. I mean, Otis Rush. We backed him up one time at, let me think of what year that was, must have been. I was going to be right around 75 at the Great American Music Hall, which is one of the nicest places you could ever
in the
play.
city.
It reminds me of the Lawrence Opera House. It's these places were made for like acoustic music. So the choir you play, it's beautiful. Another room like that is the casino in Avalon.
Catalina Island. Yeah.
Same thing. That's a cork-lined floor, and music sounds so nice. Anyway, there's Otis Rush. I'm looking at this guy going, God, he's the toughest guy to figure out of all of them, for me. Especially when I didn't play swing stuff, just bending notes, because he has the craziest vibrato, and it's just unique. There's no other guy like him. So to sit down with him and watch him, just was amazing. And he sang so good, man, and so powerful. It was amazing.
Ask him Mitch Dell's question.
Well, Mitch, I asked. The question was put forth on a social media today. What questions would you ask Junior Watson if you could speak with him right now? And Mitch Dell said, "Fuck."
I say, "Fucking duck."
What about, you like good recordings, and you have turned me on to quite a few recordings over the last few years, and for that I want to thank you right here publicly. But the question was put forth when I asked today, do you have a favorite, or what are the top 5 albums you might take, like, the Desert Island question? If you were stuck on a desert island and you could pick 5, what would they be?
God, that's a tough call.
Is there anything, or do you like them all?
I like them all, but I'll give you one, because it has nothing to do with what I really would want to do. Well, I take that back. It's what I would want to do, which I know nothing about, but I love it. Is Hop Wilson. Anything by Hop Wilson.
No kidding.
Yeah, because it's just so strange to me, man. It's like another world.
It is a little.
It's backwards. It's backwards slide playing. In other words, most guys when they play slide or any kind of open tune guitar, that first chord is the one chord, right? Not with Hop Wilson. That's the 5 chord. So he's starting up high, and it's backwards. And if you try to figure it out, he's going here, and then all of a sudden, that last one is the 5. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
it's bizarre.
do.
It's bizarre the way he's the only guy that did that. You know? So to this day, the first time I heard it, I go, that is amazing. What is that? How does he do that? And then finally, when I actually got a slide and tried to get, I don't know if I had the right tuning, but I definitely had the fact that it's an open thing. When it's open, that's the 5 chord. And I go, never heard of that, of anybody ever doing it. So there you have it.
Break out the slide. Let's have it. No.
And I think he's amazing.
Yeah, I like him a lot. I have that Houston Ghetto. I think you turned me on to that.
Oh yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah, it is nice.
Rocking at the coconut top and all that shit.
Let's see. And we talked about a little bit about Pee Wee Crayton. Tell us about the influence Pee Wee Crayton's had on your life. I hear a lot of stuff when I get to hear it. Pardon me for jumping back in. But I've heard from you about Pee Wee Crayton and about Bill Jennings and a lot of these people. And when I go and listen to them, I can hear the influence that they've given you. How has Pee Wee Crayton affected you in your life and your playing?
Well, I mean, you know, Pee Wee's whole deal was that he just basically bastardized what T-Bone had going. T-Bone would sit down and show him, and you know, it's just like if I showed you something, you're never going to play it exactly the way I play it, especially if you don't understand it. And that's what Pee Wee was doing. He just basically got 2 or 3 little things he did and then placed them in his own spot. And he really doesn't sound like T-Bone. He sounds, right off the bat, he sounded like himself. And you know, the most amazing thing about Pee Wee was he was 37 when he picked up the guitar for the first time. And within 2 years, he had a #1 hit, which was Blues After Hours. And that's why I play that, you know, as a tribute to him. When Pee Wee died, there was a whole, that was 1986, you know, everybody, it seemed like, died. I was going to like 7 funerals in a row.
William Clark, Hollywood Fats.
It was terrible. It was a terrible time, you know, and they were all physical funerals as opposed to now where everybody gets cremated and that's the end of it. So we were going to, you know, Southern Baptist church, every kind of church, man, and you know, grave sites. People talk, you know, about for hours, you know, about the person. It was that way. It was good, but it was just a terrible time in my life because so many guys that I'd played with and really knew, one after another, at Pee Wee's ceremony. So the church was packed, man, packed with everybody was there. Lloyd Glenn, you know, all the guys that played with everybody, man, just a cast of characters, man. So I'm sitting there in church pew, right in the front. There comes Lowell Folsom. He sits right in front of me, and somebody says, and Johnny Dyer's next to me, and I go, is that Lowell's wife? And he goes, no. He goes, no. And I go, like this. So the deacon, or whatever you want to call him, is giving the eulogy thing there, and he said, yes, on October 26, 1986, we lost the best blues guitar player in L.A. And Lowell goes, of course, I had it in a thing like,
Can you tell us any stories about Pee Wee that you recall in your encounters with Pee Wee?
Yeah, well, my first encounter with him, period, before I actually really met him. We were playing this festival, 3-day festival at the Lighthouse at Hermosa Beach.
Sure.
It had to be 1978, 79. My mother actually made a collage of that period, and I don't know what, somebody might have taken it. Maybe I have it somewhere in the house. Anyway, so, you know, we did a sound check. We're going to be playing first there with Rod, with backing up Smokey Wilson. So we do our little sound check, and the guy goes, there's food across the street. Well, when I come back, my amp had been moved back against that brick wall, and there was a half stack Marshall right where my amp was. And I go, what the heck? So I just pushed this big old thing to get back in. All of a sudden, this little short guy blows past me and comes up, and I go, Rod! And I hear Rod go, what do you want, Pee Wee? And I go, Pee Wee? And I look over and it's Pee Wee Crayton. And I went, oh my God. He goes, your guitar player moved my amp out of the way. And Rod goes, hey man, you're not playing until way later, man. Let's just let the man play this show. How are you going to play the show with your big ass amp in the way? So that was that. So he sat down in front of me, and he was drinking, smoking, and chewing gum
At the same time.
Basically at the same time, like this. When he's looking up at it, and everything's going good. And finally, Rod goes and starts walking over by the bar. It's real dark in there, so I don't see what's going on. Well, he just laterals the harmonica mic, and he hands it to. Then all of a sudden, I see that it's George Smith, and he comes back to the bandstand. And when he gets to the stage, he just stops the band and goes, "Do da 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 da," boom. And we come in with all this stuff, and it got so good to Pee Wee that he comes up on the stage. So I'm standing right there, and I go, "Uh-oh, what's happening?" So he grabs his guitar off that stack, and he hits this G chord, G7, and I went, "Oh my God!" So I just reached back and turned his amp down to our level. Well, once again, as soon as the set was over, he goes right past me. He doesn't say a word to me. He goes, "Rod, this guitar player turned my..." He goes, "Hey, Pee Wee, how are we supposed to do our show, man, when you got to come up there like that?" He goes, "You got to do your stuff with it." "Yeah, okay, man." And we became friends. Years later. That's how it started.
Long Overdue was your first solo release, and then you were back-to-back with Linwood was an outstanding album as well, and then If I Had a Genie. But I remember thinking, because I'd just been lectured by James Harmon, and I asked about his CDs, and he goes, "Well, I got about 30 of them, don't you have?" You know, I'm trying to find some, and I got a similar response from Watts, and it turns out that he's on so many different recordings that you just have to seek them out and find them, and there's lots to be found, like Back to Back, and
no, that's a 50-50 record. That's why I consider it partially mine. Else I wouldn't mention it. No, I'm on 200 something records, CDs. And
Any favorites?
Shit, I'm just happy to be in there with anybody, to tell you the truth. You know, because all of it you learn from. You know, so it's a stepping stone process. One highlight to me was playing with Little Willie Littlefield, recording on this record with this guy Barbecue Barnes, and you know, he was a crazy type guy. You know, he was like, "Hey!" And he grabbed me by the back of the head and kissed me on the lips in front of thousands of people at the Amsterdam.
thank you.
And I just went, "Oh my God!" But you know what? That's just the way he was. He was excited. He was excited that, you know, that I had an arch top guitar. He goes, "You know, I haven't seen one of those since the '40s." And I go, "Really?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he just loved the way it was done, because it reminded him, you know, of when he first started playing the music. That's the way everybody played back then.
Was that the Black Espana, or what was it?
No, that was actually a blonde Epiphone Zephyr Deluxe Reason. But I had the Esplanade, but it was in the shop at that time. Yeah. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, you were known to a lot of people because of that. Well, I don't know how to say that correctly, but they identified the Black Esplanade
Esplanade, yeah.
and you together a lot, I guess, during the Flyers days.
$50 guitar, yeah, I paid $50 for it.
That's right. If I recall correctly, and if I may take liberties, you told me that you were in a shop somewhere and somewhere in
Bend, Oregon.
Bend, Oregon,
where George Smith was.
and Rod was there, and you didn't have the money, and he spotted you for it.
Yeah. Well, here's the true story. That condo that I was telling you about, that George Smith and Rod and myself were in, it was a big condo with 3 bedrooms. Rod goes, "Hey man, would you? I'm kind of tired, man. You know, he was sick with something, I can't remember. He goes, "Would you check the laundry?" Couple of things. So when I went out to the laundry, I found like $2,000 floating in the wash.
Today I'd want to do wash.
And I go, what the fuck? I go, what happens now? So anyway, I just take all this money out. I put it in a scarf and I just wrapped a rubber band around it and then put it in the dryer. Because it was soaking wet, this money. I thought it was going to rip and disintegrate, right? So I kept it all in one spot and I dried it. But I was out there staying with it because I go, somebody goes in that dryer and pulls that bag and sees what's in there. It's $2,000. It's a lot of money, man, back then. So I come in there and I go, Rod, you missing this? And he went, oh man, you're an honest man. So that's when we went down to the guitar shop. That was everybody's money for the last 2 weeks. Or, you know, we never made any money back then. So, guy goes, Rod goes, how much you want for this guitar? And he goes, $50. And he goes, is there a case? And the aluminum binding. He goes, that is the case. And the amp, we should have got the amp, man. The amp was it was a Commando. But it had 8/8s.
Oh yeah.
And that's the big money amp now, but somebody had painted it black. I think it was tuck and rolled even. Somebody tried to tuck and roll it.
Orally.
And they only wanted $45 for that amp. You know. Well, I goes, I'm not hauling that back. You know, back then everybody wanted burl wood. You know, if you went up to Oregon.
Oh yeah.
And he brought like 2 fucking tabletops like this, you know, that thick, burl wood. Who knows? He might have sold. We were selling them and making money. Why I oughter.
Why I oughta.
I gotta get one.
Do an outro.
Okay.
Mention where we're at.
We're here at Third Garden Studios today with Junior Watson doing a little interview. This is Sheldon Abbott with KUCI Radio. Thank you for being here with us. To be continued.
Can I do an intro just like that?
This is Sheldon Abbott from KUCI Radio, and let me start over. This is Sheldon Abbott from KUC. Hold it just 1 second.
Okay, try it again, man.
This is Sheldon Abbott from KUCI Radio in Irvine, and I'm here with Junior Watson today, and we're going to just find out a little bit more about Junior, the things that you wanted to know about Junior all these years.
That was wonderful, but do it again and say where we're at.
This is Sheldon Abbott with KUCI Radio in Irvine, and I'm here today with Junior Watson, and I'm going to be interviewing him and finding out all the good things that we have to learn about Junior that we didn't know in the past. And I want to thank you to Third Garden Studios for letting us come in here and make a mess today. Now, okay. This is Sheldon Abbott with KUCI Radio. I'm here with Junior Watson at Third Garden Studio, and we're here to find out all the things about Junior you never knew about in the past. Let's get started.
Tell all my friends bye-bye.